We are gathered here tonight for a show, but these are not the times for entertainments. I don't want to be Neo fiddling as Rome burns. So tonight we must do is a deadly ritual. But I tell you that these dark arts exact a cost. A cost we are seeing today in the form of a black spectra known as the Widow. The Widow stalking our cities, killing and desecrating our friends and neighbors. And now we must cleanse our city of the violence that plagues us, and of the evil widow who holds us shaking in her grasp. She must be banished and sent back to the depths from which she came. You need not fear, I hold safeguard over our souls. I commune with they that may not be named, and within the regiment of the widow resides my new acolyte, Benita Botticelli. She gets into the box, and right before Benita is getting sawed in half, the widow shows up, and Detective Kenneth looks over and he sees her, and she sees him, and then they both run out of the theater, and they end up making it to a graveyard. And then now back at the theater, Benita is actually getting sawed in half, and she's yelling, "It hurts!" And blood is flying out of the box as Verdi looks on with a sick smile. Benita screams comes to a stop as gallons of blood flow out of the box. And now back at the graveyard, the detective hits the widow in the wrist with his billy club. But she gets the upper hand on him once again, and she's holding the knife to his chest, and she grabs the billy club. And then she stands over him, and he looks up at her, and she looks down at him with the knife, and then she takes off and runs. Back at the theater, George is telling the crowd, "She is gone, my friends. The widow is dead. Her spell over us is over. And she has been vanquished back into hell." He opens up the box, and Benita's guts fall out of it. George looks at it as the crowd runs out of the theater. Viviana says, "How could you have done this to her?" "It should have not happened," George says. "How the hell could it have happened?" Basil says. "I've done it 100 times. And the detective walks up and he says, "I just heard what happened. She didn't slide her body into the secret chamber like we rehearsed," George says. "You shouldn't have done this trick. You're a monster," Viviana says to him. "She wanted to do it, this one most of all. Obviously she wasn't ready. We rehearsed it 5 times. What? Kenneth says, and he looks. It's the trap door. "Well, she couldn't get herself out," Viviana says. "No, I left it unlocked because I couldn't find my key." "Isn't that convenient? You invite my sister to be your assistant and then you kill her?" "I didn't do this. Somebody else locked it." "Who has the key?" Kenneth says. "Only Shanika and myself." "Well, that must be her, that jealous bitch." No, she quit the show of her own violation. "The key is something I never misplace." Bertie looks over at the detective and at Viviana, and then Kenneth looks at Viviana's dress, and he pulls out a key, and he holds it up to George, and he says, "That's my key." "I never seen it before in my life," Viviana says. "Well, you're under arrest for the murder of your sister." "What? This is nonsense. I would never. George is going crazy, knocking everything over in the shrine. The widow appears behind him, and he slowly turns around and he sees her. And as she jumps on him, 12 years ago, George is choking Margaret, and she says, I can't. In the name of the all unholy, and offer this sacrifice, this martyr to transcend herself, to transfigure and open a crack so I might see through to which doesn't exist. She loses consciousness and then slowly awakens, and he starts to choke her again. Now back at the shrine, the widow has George's neck wrapped around with a rope, and she's tightening it really hard, and he says, I can't. And she tightens it harder, and he says, I deserve this. And with one final twist, snapping of his neck, the great George Rondon is dead. Back at the police station, Kenneth is talking to Viviana, and she is saying, I didn't kill Benita. He says, we have multiple witnesses of your physical alteration with your sister. It was an argument. I wouldn't kill her. I'm not arresting you just for her death, but for every one of the widow's murders. That's insanity. Is it? You are one of the few people left in that infamous photo. You are known to whip your servants, and you've even bragged about it. You have to beat your servants every now and then. I wouldn't do that to anyone in our circle. Certainly not murder. Well, you left the theater just before the widow arrived. You don't understand. My sister was gouging me. Oh, your sister who is now dead? The one person who probably knew what you were doing? Was she going to reveal your secret? Doesn't mean I did it. We'll save it for the judge.